And thank you, Peter. And once again, on behalf of Tempt and Quad Graphics, thank you and the whole team for another great opportunity today to host another great keynote. Print circulars are something we have all grown up with. This morning's keynote session will start to bring some focus on what lies ahead for this product we've all known so well. Steve Frenda of the Institute will be joined today by execs from Oracle and 3 retailers to explain the topic. Please welcome Steve Frenda.
Sit in the front row. We didn't see the place fill up. We've got a little standing room only. And again, as Peter said, there are some seats down front if you want to get comfortable for a while here. Boy, oh boy, this is my 8th Expo as a member of the Institute, and it is so much fun to see all of my old friends. You just can't buy enough plane tickets to renew all of the friendships and acquaintances that I have. Of course, Peter dismisses that because he says, of course you got a lot of friends. You've been 75 years in the industry. And so with that, we'll start the festivities here. Yesterday, Peter was talking about seismic shifts in our industry and that evolution is starting to turn into revolution. Well, the circular revolution is about to be upon us. The practice of retailers offering branded products, I did a little homework on this. I can find instances of that dating back 45 years to about 1971. And brands getting in retailer run of press ads at that time, it was, as you might guess, carbonated beverages. Over the years, food, drug, mass retailers have trained shoppers to rely on their paper circulars. But it's now faced with the challenge of retraining their customers as they demand to be spoken to in a language that's more relevant and digital. We're honored today to have Oracle Data Cloud and 3 retailers, 3 regional thought leaders, join us to discuss the relevancy of circulars amongst today's shoppers. Actually, Oracle in this study teamed with 8 retailers to determine exactly where we stand with circulars and how we're going to transform for the future. So first, Angela Myers of Oracle will share with us some of the highlights of that study. We'll then begin to explore in a panel discussion what changes we see in the near term and in the future. So joining us for the panel discussion will be Blaine Bringhurst, SVP Marketing and Merchandiser for Price Chopper Supermarkets, Chris Hardin, Director of Brands and Customer Strategy for Brookshire Grocery Company, and Amit Bardwaj, Senior Director of Customer Loyalty at Marsh Supermarkets. These accomplished professionals have seen it all. Together, among them, they've been over 80 years in the industry, so they've just got me beat. So let's get on with it. I'd like to bring Angela Myers of Oracle to the stage to take us through the study.
Thanks, Steve. So the way we're going to work this today is I'm going to give these wonderful gentlemen, my partners here, a few minutes to introduce themselves and a little bit about their companies. And then we'll fast forward and we'll talk through the research. And then we'll come back around and Steve will lead us in a panel discussion. So first up, Chris Hardin from Brookshire Grocery.
Thanks, Angela. Good morning. I'm Chris Hardin from Brookshire Grocery Company. We're in primarily Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. We have 151 stores and 3 banners. We have 117 conventional stores, and that's Brookshire's. And that's really what I want to focus on today because that is the banner that carries our loyalty data. A little bit something I think that's unique for us is that we have an older customer. We've got boomers and 60-year-olds, and it makes up a big part of who we are, but they're very digitally engaged, and that would be a little counterintuitive. You wouldn't think that, but it's very true for us. So, our roadmap, our marketing roadmap really has been one of a path to personalization. So this study was a really nice checkpoint for us to be able to say, what are customers, what do they really feel, and maybe it might help us define some direction. It's our goal really to be as close to our customers as possible using digital engagement. We have a very robust customer database, about 1.1 million cardholders, and that's really been driven through a fuel reward program. 85% of our customers are actually engaged in that program, and the majority of them have opted into email, text, or Facebook, and so we have a really nice connectivity going, but now, so what do we do with it? I mean, that's really what we're at for. So I kind of begged my buddy Angela to be able to add one more slide, but I think it really is pretty telling. So cool stuff is great, right? But it's really all about sales at the end of the day. And so we did an internal study, and what we found was really telling to us. Our core shoppers who are digitally engaged, they spend more money with us, actually about $600 more per year. They're 20% more likely to stay a good, loyal customer. And that's about what we thought would happen. But what the real aha moment for us was that the opportunity shopper who just barely is shopping with us, they're obviously going to a competitor, they don't have big baskets, and they don't show up very much, right? They spend another $675 per year. They're about 20% more likely to stay there, not go away completely, but 150% more likely to actually become a loyal customer. That is super valuable because it allows us to grow our business from within, and that's huge for us.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Next up, Amit Bardwaj.
Thanks, Angela. I'm the Senior Director of Customer Loyalty and spent about 20 years in retail, mostly in the analytical, merchandising, and the last 5 to 7 years in marketing. And in the last 5 to 7 years, been focused more on personalization through marketing automation, through digital, and through innovation. And some of you here might know that Marsh Supermarkets has a great heritage in innovation. We were the first company in retail which adopted the barcode. So what you see, the barcode is really coming from Marsh. And we want to kind of work on that legacy and move forward with the changing consumers' preferences. Marsh we have 73 stores spread over central Indiana and western Ohio, and half of them have pharmacies. And we serve a diverse set of customers. Essentially, from one end, you would see the affluent metro demographics, and on the other end, we have the value-seeking rural folks, and almost everybody in between. So that has its own opportunities and challenges. So when Angela and her group came up with the e-circular project, we were really excited. And I would say there were 3 major reasons for us to feel like that. The first was we were seeing that the footprint for the circular was shrinking. Not because we didn't want to invest in the circular, it's just that that model wasn't working. It was under financial stress. And we would see that happen more and more. So which leaves a group of shoppers which we are not able to communicate with. The second piece was the digital shoppers, or I would say the shoppers were consuming digital media at an outstanding rate. And it was all over the place. Their preferences have changed, especially it has something to do with demographics. But what we see is we have to be able to talk to these people in the media they prefer. And so in that sense, e-circular has its own legs. But the third part, which I think is more important, is we are a regional player. We don't have scale. And what Oracle do, and kudos to them, is to bring 8 of us together and give us the scale, which will make sense for the CPG community and the manufacturers to be able to talk to us and say, well, this makes sense. We don't have to talk to 8 people. Now this is a whole group. It has national scale, and it'll make sense, and I guess would be a win-win for everybody. Going forward, we are looking at changing our media mix. Obviously, everybody's thinking about it. It's unfortunately, I don't think print's really going away. So we end up spending on print and we end up spending on digital, and it all doubles up. And so that's where we need the support of the CPG community to make that work, because I think that would be a win-win for all of us.
Thanks, Amit. And next is Blaine Bringhurst from Price Chopper.
Good morning, and thanks, Angela. As Angela mentioned, I am at Price Chopper, which is a 130-store retail chain that operates in the Northeast. Our footprint really includes stores in Pennsylvania, New York, our core market, and then also parts of New England, 4 New England states that we operate in. Like Chris, we've built a very large pool of consumer information and data by usage of our Advantage card, which the main catapult for getting consumers to use that card is, like Chris mentioned, a fuel program that is very strong and has great penetration amongst our customers. As you would imagine, in the Northeast, kind of the older part of the country, our consumer profile kind of reflects the market in which we operate, which means that our consumers are really, it's an aging population in the Northeast. And Price Chopper, having been around for about 85 years and very community orientated, has really done a good job of capturing the hearts and minds of the boomer population and even the older clientele. And we knew that. We knew that was a relative strength for us with the boomer population. However, as we really looked at the research and looked at the data, we also found that we were under-indexing with the younger groups, the millennial population, specifically Gen X. So we have been working very hard over the last couple of years on building a strategy to be more in tune with the younger shopper, the next generation of shoppers. And that's really helped us kind of build and plan our digital roadmap, as well as some work that we've done on our in-store experience. We have recently launched a new banner in our marketing area that we call Market 32, that is really designed to capture a younger clientele. We did it in a way that it won't alienate our boomer population, because that's our core. That's our core shopper. Those are the customers that spend the majority of their money and generate the majority of our revenue with us. And we had to be very careful not to alienate them. But we found that the boomer population is, like Chris said, very digitally savvy as well. A couple of years ago at an FMI presentation, there was a speaker that addressed the group that talked and pointed out something that was very poignant, I thought. And what he told the audience, and it was intuitive, but what he told the audience was, when my wife had our firstborn baby, guess who the first new person on Facebook was? And it was his mother, his grandma, who was a boomer. So the boomer population is very adept and very willing to learn about technology, and they're using it more and more. So as we built our strategy, we kept in mind how we can really continue to communicate with the boomer population, but how we could change it just a little bit so we were more attractive to the younger generation, because that really is our future as time goes by. So we're excited for the findings out of this, because we know that the environment and the market is changing, and if we're not leading, then we're behind. And we're excited to hear to get all the learnings that we can from this endeavor.
Thanks, Blaine. So a little bit of background. I've been working with these gentlemen for the past 3 years, but our companies have actually been working together since 2008, all 3 of them. And when you think about that, that's a pretty rare thing in an industry that is filled with transactional relationships and a lot of noise. So this quote from the Minority Report, for those of you that remember that movie, really sort of describes our relationship as much as it describes our journey to get from print to digital in a personalized world. And so what I thought I would start with today is a little video clip from that movie. Wake everybody up. I know you guys, 1,000 people at cocktail hour, so here we go.
A road diverges in the desert. Lexus. The road you're on, John Anderton, is the one less traveled. Make sure you are untitled.
Good evening. You can move the old-fashioned
John Anderton.
Century 21 style provides gourmet cuisine. John Anderton. You could use a Guinness right about now.
Stressed out, John Anderton?
Escape from it all, Harrison. Get away, John Anderton. Forget your troubles for some.
Hello, Mr. Yakamoto. Welcome back to the Gap. How those assorted tank tops work out for you?
Mr. Yakamoto.
Hey, Miss Balfour, did you come back for another pair of those chamois lace-ups?
This movie came out in 2002. And so for a little bit of perspective, think about the cell phone you owned in 2002. Mine was a Motorola flip phone, blue. Back then it was a very cool phone. But we didn't even have smartphones. Smartphones didn't even come into the picture until the mid-2000s, and the iPhone in 2007. So it's interesting to think back to where we were in 2002 and that movie being so advanced through eye recognition. Today we have mobile recognition and we have cookie recognition. So we have all of the elements to create that level of personalization. What we're going to talk about today is this journey that we've been on with our partners here and the other retailers that were involved in the research. First, we're going to walk through the results of that research, but it's important to mention that these other components that we're on in the journey. So each one of these retailers is either executing a personalized ad today in some form, typically email, or some are on their way to executing that personalized version of the ad. They've also launched digital distribution tests. Two of these retailers are either in the middle of or just completed their digital distribution tests where they've looked at the right audience, matched them up online, and served ads that would entice them just as the circular would entice them. And then lastly, we have to figure out what's the right platform. That piece of paper, that 8 to 10 pages is pretty big, and it's very difficult to translate in the digital space. So we need to work together with our technology partners. And one of the things that we at Oracle Data Cloud did on behalf of these guys was sort of submit this notion of the paper to digital ad with full personalization to Facebook. And they awarded us with an Innovator of the Year award, really based on the work that we're doing with this group here. So a little background to the research, just so we can level set how many people we talked to and such. Each retailer had the opportunity to survey 500 or 1,000 of their shoppers. And we looked at a combination of what we call core, opportunity, and fringe. And you heard that language a little bit here. Core being their primary shoppers, opportunity being, think of them as switchers, and fringe being somebody else's primary. But we have some information on them, and they visit these stores at least once or twice a year, not very often. So that mix gave us a real understanding of what was going on in the market. We also made sure that we had email survey and phone survey, so we didn't have a bias. The survey was conducted from spring through midsummer, and in total we had 5,500 responses. So the data we're looking at today is that total aggregate view. So what did we find? There are 4 key findings I'll go through with all of the backup. First, retailers have trained shoppers to use the print ad. You heard Steve say that earlier. However, what we find is that shoppers are open to being retrained on alternate ways of finding the critical information about the ad. 55% of shoppers surveyed said it was very important for them to receive the print ad. It's a lot of shoppers. Who are they? This is the really interesting part. We were able to look at their data and their behavior behind the survey to validate whether or not those shoppers that said the ad was very important, were they actually shopping that way? And it turns out they are. So the group that says the ad is very important spends $8 per more per household per week, and they spend 2 times as much on the front page of the ad, and they save 1.5 times more on promotion. They tend to skew a little older, but the reality is 50% of them are millennials that say this. 61% of shoppers that receive the ad say they always read the ad. And who are they? They also tend to spend a little bit more on the ad each week. They spend 2 times as much on the front page and 1.5 times as much on promotion. And this group, who's really dedicated to reading that ad, also skews even older, almost 65% in the boomer generation. And 87% of shoppers that receive and use the ad say they look through the whole thing. And surprisingly, when we ask the same thing about the electronic ad, that number goes to 70%. So when somebody's flipping through an electronic ad on your site as a retailer, 70% are looking through the whole ad. However, if they stopped receiving the print ad, 51% of shoppers would look for the ads electronically on the internet, and 38% said they would just go to the store and shop as usual. In fact, 51% of the market is already looking at electronic ads today. So if you've ever done any focus groups on circular behavior, which I have over the course of many years, it's a fascinating subject. And equally fascinating are the quotes and other write-ins that we got. So I thought I would share a few today because, like gas rewards, circulars sort of trigger this irrational emotion in people, and it's kind of hilarious. Shoot myself! Just kidding. Don't take my printed flyers away, please. You have to read it like that because there's 3 exclamation points after every single sentence. I think I know where this is leading. I really like getting the printed ads, but if I had to, I would look online. I really like getting my printed ads. I just throw the printed ones in the recycle bin. I look online at the circulars. So the quotes sort of line up with the data to say that many people are still using the paper, and they want to use paper because they've been trained on that paper. At the same time, there are just as many shoppers who are really interested in looking online and don't really want to be bothered with the paper. So we have to appeal to all of them. So how are the different generations using the electronic ad today? Key finding number 2. The training has already started, and Gen X are as plugged in as millennials. Strong mobile solutions will be key to the transition from print to digital. When we asked shoppers how they look at the electronic ad today, a lot of them say, well, I get it through email. That's how I look at it. And in fact, we see that skews even higher for the older generation, much more attuned to email. Not surprisingly, we see that the younger generations, both millennials and Gen X, are looking at the ad either through the website on their phone or tablet, and also through mobile app. And an interesting surprise for us was to see the difference in how a Gen X looks at mobile apps and looks at circulars on a mobile app versus how millennials does. In fact, across the board, smartphone usage very high among Gen X and much more deeply penetrated than for millennials. Not surprisingly, these results varied by retailer. So what you're looking at here is sort of the highs and lows, or the mins and max, of how they responded to that question about how they look at the electronic circular. And so this group, this millennials, we have a retailer that has 85% of millennials looking at an electronic ad through email. Another retail, only 41%. If we look at mobile app, 46% of millennials looking at an online circular through a mobile app at one retailer, and only 6% for another. You can clearly see why this starts to matter, because each market has a different level of complexity, and some of that is due to the assets that each of these retailers has already, and the assets that their competitors have, and how they've trained shoppers to use the electronic ad. Similarly, for Gen X, we see these gaps, although not quite as wide, across email, mobile site, and mobile app, but they still exist. And across the boomers, we see not as strong usage, of course, in mobile site and mobile app, but certainly 82% at one retailer using email to get electronic ads, and the low is 58%. So boomers are much more engaged in email. In terms of what will happen in the future, so we ask shoppers, how do you think you're going to use ads in the future? Will you use paper more often? Will you use digital more often? We find that a lot still say, I will continue to use print. And they tend to skew towards that older shopper who just doesn't want to give up the behavior that they've had for years. But we also find a strong amount saying, I'm going to use both. I think I'll continue to use both. And not surprisingly, the younger folks skew a little higher towards, I'll use electronic ads only in the future. So what is the risk? This is a really, really important question, because one of the things that each of these retailers is battling internally is a lot of people of the mindset that there is no possible way we could get rid of print. If we get rid of print, our sales will tank. We've cut pages before, our sales tanked. You hear all of these sort of internal reasons as to why it doesn't make any sense to cut print. So we thought what we would do is try to figure out how do we get at and quantify this risk. And so we did it by looking at the customers who said the ad is very or somewhat important to them, and they said they would shop somewhere else or leave altogether if they no longer received the printed ad. Key finding number 3, there is a risk to rushing the transition from print to digital, and a slower transition with availability of both digital and print will be required to ensure that we can mitigate this risk and not lose any of our customers to competitors. We found that 6% of households are truly at risk. They rate the ad as somewhat or very important, and if they stopped receiving the ad, they would shop somewhere else. The interesting thing about the way we asked this question is we didn't give them the option to say, I would shop somewhere else or I would leave. We only allowed them to say that they would look for it online or go to the store and shop as usual, and we had this other bucket. And so these customers actually said, I don't want to answer that way. I would leave. That's how angry I would be if you took my paper away. So really tried to harness the passion behind the behavior here, and that's how we landed on 6% of the households. Those households represent 7% of the sales. So again, we have the ability to tie that to their sales behavior. An interesting note is that this group skews very high for what we call opportunity shoppers. So these are the shoppers that are cross-shopping anyway. Not a surprise that those are the ones that would be the most at risk. And of course, this risk does vary by retailer, depending on the geographical location. Blaine mentioned the Northeast being a really old market, and having operated there myself for many years will tell you that circular usage is so much higher in the Northeast than pretty much anywhere else in the country. So not surprising, their risk is going to be higher than someone else's risk. We have some retailers in the Midwest and West that are as low as 4% risk of households and 3% of sales. So how does personalization fit in? Key finding number 4. Personalization of the electronic ad is the linchpin to the digital transformation. We believe that offering customers relevant items can be the carrot that will get them to transition from print to digital. Why? 86% of shoppers think that personalized sale items, as in the circular, are a great or good idea. And of those that think it's a great or good idea, 73% say that they would prefer to receive those via email. These numbers aren't entirely surprising because each one of these retailers, along with all the retailers in our network, produce personalized rewards programs, whether they're through direct mail or email, and they have continued success year over year over year. So it's not a surprise that as customers get more used to personalized offers, that they come to expect them to a degree. And it's also not a surprise that email is so strong because many of our partners actually only deliver those personalized rewards through email today. But we do see a day where that will be consistent through the mobile app as well. 14% of households that said personalized items were a good or great idea said they'd like to receive them via mobile app. We believe this number will get significantly higher as soon as mobile apps actually catch up to the output of email and print today. And 75% of households would definitely or probably make a trip to another store for relevant coupons that were not from their primary store. 75%. And what's even more interesting about this is that 71% of a retailer's core shoppers rated it the same way. So they are a primary shopper of these stores, and they said, yeah, if I got a relevant coupon from a store that wasn't my primary, I would probably or definitely go to that other store. So the ability for personalized offers to actually shift behavior it's really strong. So how do we get from print to digital? All right, there we go. So first and foremost, this journey is going to take some time, and we need to remember that there has to be a sufficient availability of both the print circular and the digital circular for a period of time to get customers retrained and retransitioned to finding those deals in a digital way. The other things that are really important here is that a retailer has to make sure that all of their assets are connected and make sense for the customer. So if I log into a website and I download personal offers, and then I go to the store and I open that app and I'm not seeing the same thing, they're not connected and they're not telling the same story. So it's important for all of those assets to come together. We also believe that mobile solutions are going to be the key to transition for Gen X and millennials over the course of time. And of course, personalization will absolutely be the linchpin. Almost every customer says that they want some form of personalization. And lastly, we as an industry have to solve for what are the right platforms. Today, that 8 to 12 page ad does not look very good sitting in a Facebook carousel ad, but it will in the future. And so we all have to figure out together, how are we going to get from that overabundant ad to one that's highly relevant and customized for every single customer? What are the right platforms? And technology is moving so fast, we have to make sure that we're keeping up with it. So with that, I will turn it back over to Steve for some questions.
Thank you, Angela. Very enlightening. Peter, as you know, I could go on for 2 hours. I'm so passionate about this subject, so give me a 5-minute heads up when it's time. So what I'm going to do, we've put together a series of questions, and I'm going to direct the questions to each of our panelists, and I'll call one of the folks out, and then an opportunity for color commentary from the other folks. So what were some of the findings that were, and I'll direct this to Amit, some of the findings of the survey that were surprising to you?
Well, in general, I would say, I mean, we saw this movement towards digital, so most of the findings were not very surprising. But two things kind of stuck out, and the first was how many people read the circulars back to back. And we are almost always very focused on, say, 80% or 90% of our time when we build a circular is spent on the front page, or some folks would also do the similar treatment for the back page. But inside, we don't make so many changes, or we don't pay so much attention to. But what we realized from the research was that we might have to shift the way we build the circular. The other piece, which again was maybe this is more of tactics. So we know some of the key items which bring people to the stores, and we were always having this item approach. But looks like from the research, it's pointing towards more of a department or a category approach. So for example, we know produce items which bring people to the store, but we didn't really think about produce as a category or a department, or dairy as a department. And that was surprising, and so that kind of changes how we want to address that.
Anybody else? Okay. You all touched about the importance of the study and why you're doing it, but why now? Chris, I'll have you lead off here.
Thanks, Steve. Well, for us, it really aligns with our marketing roadmap. So where we're at right now in our space is that we're about a month away from launching SAP CRM system, which is built on their in-memory HANA platform very fast, which is something that you just absolutely must make the investment in. Maybe not that system, but something that gets you the speed that you need to be able to create these offers and then get them out to the customer in real time or almost real time. So for us, we're just kind of a touch point for us to say, hey, yeah, we need to go ahead and continue to do what we're doing. But I just want to make a quick point that we really feel like, and Angela hit on this great, but we feel like we need the value of personalization here to be able to really make this work. It's not just about digitizing the circular. That's maybe where we started, but that's not where we are today. We have to add the personalization, personal offers, personal pricing, personal content, recipes, maybe our points program. All of that stuff's got to be tied together and offered up in a way that makes that digital circular worth their time. So in order to get to that transition, that's where we have to go.
Very good.
I would just add to that, the consumer's changing and the technology changing very fast too. When I was being fitted for my microphone, the technician asked me, did you have an iPhone? Will you make sure you put it on airplane mode? I just realized a couple minutes ago that I didn't put my watch on airplane mode. 6 months ago, that wasn't a consideration. It is today. That's how fast the technology is changing. And our customers, in a non-creepy way, they want to feel like you know them. And that's why personalization married with technology is so important to our consumer today.
I would say, if you have kids, they're telling you that every day. This circular is not going to work for them. So if you want to plan for the future, you definitely need to be in it.
One of the things I was struck by in the survey is the fact that 50% are going to your respective sites in order to do a pre-shop. And as I went to each of your sites, as I see the new generation of where you're tying the circular to the list and to the click-to-card couponing, and you're all doing that, that's very exciting. And I'm going to ask Blaine a little bit about the value proposition associated with that and how you look at that.
Yeah, so we've been testing personalized e-circular for about 9 months or so, and we have some really good data. We set it up a good test, a good control group, and really looked at the data hard. And we've migrated the amount of items we were personalizing from starting off with just 12 to getting to the entire e-circ being personalized, at least in order of which the consumer sees it. And the data has been very compelling. We're seeing over a 26-week test with a sample size that is more than sufficient to give us good learnings, is that consumers that are getting the personalized e-circular are spending $2 more per trip in our stores than those that aren't. So they're finding value in being able to easily find items that are relevant to them and that are on top of their mind without having to search through it. $2 per trip is a compelling reason to put a lot of vigor behind this.
Great. Chris, this is for you. I noticed on your mobile app that you have a scan from the pantry part of that application. I'm real interested in what kind of reaction are you getting from your shoppers on that?
Yeah, Steve, it's really pretty new. Our web provider is My Web Grocer, and that's their app, and this functionality is just new to it. And it allows the customer to go to the fridge or the pantry, scan the UPC, and it automatically adds it to their list, which they can see again in store on the mobile app. And it's a pretty neat. Customers they're telling us that they like it, but I can tell you personally, there's a downside to it. My wife will go and scan all what she wants in, and I'm at shopping. I can no longer make a mistake and blame it on somebody else. Because it gives us a picture, it's a description and a size. I just can't get it wrong. So I'm sure she'll find a way to tell me it's wrong anyway.
Hey. Yeah. Keeping peace at home, that's
right.
That's good. But I think it really speaks to the whole proposition of value. As we've talked about circulars in the past, we've talked about the discounting and the savings being part of that, and I'm going to direct this to Amit. As you guys are looking at this, what are the other kind of value propositions that the shoppers are looking for?
So I would say, in terms of the e-circular versus, or I would say the personalized circular versus paper circular, I think paper doesn't stand a chance, because this is a game changer in terms of you can give the shopper what she wants. And I would say you don't promote steak to a vegan. You don't promote artisan bread to a gluten-free shopper. And there is no way you could do that with a paper circular. So it's in that sense, it gives you a whole range of potential opportunities for personalization. And it can start from first understanding the intent. We strongly believe that we need to understand the intent first if we can. And a shopping list is a great tool for us to understand what she wants to shop. And when you think about savings, she doesn't want all the million savings in the world. She wants a share of savings which she wants to buy, and that's her shopping list. And if you can apply and put all your technical resources to make sure that she's getting those savings, it's a game changer in the sense that now it is everything you do is relevant to her, whether it's recipes or anything else you want to add to those pieces.
I would just add that we have had good success with a personalized, targeted mailer that's not digitized yet. It will be soon. But what's been very interesting is although we've had very good redemption on the price and item offers, we've actually had more engagement in personalized recipes than we have in money-saving coupons and things like that. So consumers are looking for ways to fix meals, and when you can personalize a recipe, it's very powerful.
Blaine, I'm going to kick this one over to you. In addition to the print and digital circulars we've talked about, TPRs, the thousands of TPRs that exist in your store, are a big part of your pricing scheme. Talk to us about what you see in the future with that.
You know, one of the things we're all faced with in this industry is a very valuable resource that we call trade funds, and spending trade funds efficiently, both from a merchant retailer perspective and a CPG perspective. We have to figure out a way to be more efficient in our trade funds, and personalization enables us to do that. We run a lot of promotions in this industry that we are rewarding customers without changing their behavior, and then sometimes they're not even aware of the fact that they got a discount on that item. They would have bought it anyway. As we work on digitization and personalization, we can be much more efficient and effective in the use of our trade funds, in putting trade dollars where they'll make a difference and they'll change behavior. That's impossible to do in a paper-based, non-personalized environment.
You know, I'm struck as we look at the study and the differences between the retailer. Chris, I'm going to point this one to you and maybe ask Amit to comment as well. But there's segments within your population that demand a different approach. So, for instance, and it's widely known that Hispanic customers, they are really using mobile apps a lot more, about 2x. Comments, thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, we found out something that we really didn't expect. We started a text program that we thought, okay, well, we know that Hispanics are highly engaged with their mobile device. Text is going to be the big winner. So let's do it in Spanish, and let's do Hispanic items, and then run a parallel program in English. And after 6 months, 8 months, we threw a lot of marketing at it. We could not get any traction. The English version was growing like crazy, and the Spanish version would not take off. And so we went back out to ask the customer, why are you not using this? We built it for you. And it was very clear that the Hispanics just did not want to have anything different. They just wanted the mainstream version. So the answer really is no. We're not having to build anything special, at least in this instance.
Amit, any thoughts on that?
Well, when you go to personalization, you are able to talk to an individual, so that gives you some huge opportunities. I would use the segment strategy more when you look at the store and do the connection. As Angela was saying earlier, if you have a digital delivery, then you need to connect that with your store. And if you can make that connection right, it will work for you. And so, how you set up the store has, the segments have major implications on that.
Very good. So I'm going to close off with two quick questions here. I'm going to kick this over to Blaine, and then can we talk a bit about the cost of printing and distribution costs of circulars? Talk about the financials as we look ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at an advertising marketing budget, when you look at just traditional advertising, print and print paper distribution is about 65% of the amount of dollars we have allocated to talking to our consumers, and there's a lot of savings that are potentially out there as we improve our digital footprint and lessen the amount of paper we're sending to our consumers. And what that means is for the same dollar, you could really exponentially increase your reach and efficacy. Or if you chose to cut those dollars out of the budget, you could invest them in price or other programs that'll generate more loyalty. So it's a big number that we have in our print and distribution budget today.
Our strategy is to move away from general offers towards personalization. And today, as we personalize some of our offers, we deliver to our core shopper. We're seeing almost 60% engagement, which tells us that we can talk to them through this medium and not necessarily invest the same amount in paper.
Okay. Last question. There's a lot of brands in the room. There's over 100 brands that are in the room today, and I'm quite sure they'd be very interested as we look 5 years down the road in this transformation. How do you see yourselves in changing, working with brands as you think about this? Chris, I'm going to let you take the lead on this.
Well, it really becomes more about offering relevant, targeted offers to the right customer. And it's going to have to be done in a different way where, today we may have an annual plan and we know what's going to go out in the mail on Tuesday and hit the ad on Wednesday in the mailbox. We're going to need to move more towards building buckets of offers, if you will, is a good way to think of it, that lay in wait for customers to interact with in a personalized way versus the way we're doing it today. And so we're doing that now. We're doing a lot of that now with our Relevant Reward program. That's a monthly program where we have anywhere from 300 to 400 offers that lay in wait that get matched up to the consumer. That's how we get to personalization. But if we're talking about a 24/7 million customers, all those SKUs, all those stores, everything happening at once, you just can't make it happen out of the air. You have to build it and have it waiting ready for the customer.
Steve, I'm not in the prediction business. If I were, I would be working the stock market, and be a very rich man. But what I would say is the retailers and the CPG folks have to work a lot closer in the future than we are doing now. And the CPG companies have to be part of the personalization offers which we create. It can be only a retailer's responsibility to do that. I mean, they can do it only to a certain extent, but the insights and the understanding which comes from CPG, if that is layered on to the personalization process, it would be a win-win for both, and also a win for the customer ultimately because they are getting what they really need, and we've done a great job coming together and delivering that.
Closing thoughts?
I would go down two roads on this, and I'll be quick. Number one is, and we're not as far ahead as other retailers, but we're still a little bit reactive in our nature when we personalize offers. We know what they buy, and we perpetuate what they've bought. We need to become a little bit more predictive and to try to get them to think about things a little bit differently and maybe buy something they weren't thinking about. And we can use insights and analytics to help us with that. The other thing is as we talk about personalization, this industry has lived for a very long time on 12 items on the front cover of the ad. You go into the store, there's 12 displays that marry those 12 items on the front cover of the ad. As we begin to become more digitized and personalized, it may not be 12 items anymore, and it certainly won't be the same 12 items to all of your consumers. So how you build the displays to activate the consumer in store is something we're going to have to think about as an industry, and we certainly need CPG's help to do that.
Thank you, guys. As a team, we tried to come up with a few questions that would sort of get the discussion going. I'm sure several of you have many more. The group will be whisked away over to the Tempt booth where you might be able to, come over, visit a little bit, and ask some of your own questions. But please, for a moment, let's take a moment and thank the panelists. Thank you, folks, and enjoy the show.